Next, we'll review customer billing, where we'll go through various customer related documents such as invoices, debit memo, credit memo, and we'll compare how these documents relates to the documents that we used to have in 11 and R12, as well as we'll also compare with SAP. If you're coming from SAP ECC background, then how the invoice or the debit memo, credit memo relates to the invoices, debit memo, credit memo we create in SAP. I said SAP ECC because there is hardly any difference between ECC and HANA S4. The AR documents almost kind of same, so we'll compare with that. And one thing that you'll realize when you go to the invoice or the transaction form in Oracle Cloud Application, in EBS in 11 or 12, we used to have various kind of documents such as invoice, debit memo, credit memo, deposit, guarantee, chargeback. We used to have several kind of documents. But in Cloud Application, you'll have only three. That is invoice, credit memo. Maybe in future releases, Oracle will have other options. But right now, you can create debit memo, credit memo, as well as various other transactions, but not in the same page, not in the same form. In cloud applications, billing is a separate module. In 11 or 12, we used to have a single module for both invoicing purpose as well as for the receipt purpose, like the documents that you create, invoice, debit memo, credit memo, as well as the payments when you get from the customer, the receipts. You create both of them in the single module, but in cloud applications, Oracle has segregated that into two different work areas, to two different modules. One is called billing work area, billing module, and another is called receipt work area or AR receivables. We'll see that in the system. So when you navigate to the billing work area, this is the info tile that you'll see. The info tiles gives you a very high level overview of various invoices that you have right now, which are in incomplete status or pending for approval, or if invoices that need some research or import exceptions. By default, it will open the incomplete list of transactions, but if you want to view those which are pending for approval or need some research or in some import exceptions, then you can click over here in those specific areas and system will show you all those related transactions over here in the right hand side. And here in the right hand corner, you have various options, tabs. The first one is to create tasks. So if you click on this, system will show you various tasks available for your role. Depending on your role, you will see options such as creating transactions, managing transactions, creating customer, viewing customer details. Various options you'll see over here. And then the second one is to search a document, search a transaction number. And third one is to view the existing reports as well as creating new reports. And here in the main work area, you see the transaction numbers, the source from where the transaction is created, whether it is manually created or there are various ways in which we can create a transaction document. We can manually create an AR invoice, but most of the times the transactions will be created from various other sources, such as from order management. When you ship a product, system will automatically create a transaction for you. The process is same as it was in 11 or 12. When you complete the shipment transaction, system will send all those informations from the order management, from inventory to AR interface tables. Then in the AR interface tables, you need to run the invoice auto import program to create the transactions. And if you want to learn more about that process, please check out the order management training session, where we have gone through the various process of sales order creation, sales order booking, shipping, and how the invoices are created from the sales order shipment. Then there is also other options of creating transactions from PA, project accounting. If you are using project manufacturing or project accounting, there is a good chance that you might want to create AR invoices in the PA module. And once the invoices are created, that will be transported to the AR, account receivables, or the billing module in Oracle Cloud Application. Similarly, if you are doing intercompany transactions, system will be automatically generating intercompany AR invoices, and that will also come over here. So there are various sources in which the transactions can be created, and system will show you the source over here. Then the class, what kind of transaction it is, whether it is an invoice, whether it is a credit memo, whether it is a debit memo. Right now, as I've already mentioned, we don't have deposit, guarantee, chargeback over here. You won't see those options. Then the customer for which this transaction is created, customer name is over here. If you want to view other details, then you can click on the view button over here, and then system will show you columns, and you can search for other columns that you can view over here instead of going into the transaction. Of course, if you want to view all the details of the transaction, then you can click on the transaction number, and system will take you to the transaction page where you can view all the details of the transaction, the header level information, the line level information, the accounting information. You can view everything in that page. We'll come to that later. And this is the amount, the header level amount for this specific transaction. So here for this 10,000. This is the total header level amount, and the date, the due date on which the customer is supposed to send you the payment, and when you get the payment you can apply that receipt to this specific transaction. This is a very simple definition of invoice. I guess most of you already know what is an invoice, but those who are not aware of an invoice, invoice is a document. Sometimes it is also called sales invoice, that is created by the provider of a product or service to a purchaser. So when somebody is buying something from you, your customer is buying some product from you, once the product is shipped out, you need to generate an invoice so that the customer can pay you the money, and that document is called invoice. The invoice establishes an obligation of the part of the purchaser to pay, creating an account receivable. Now, if you are not doing cash transaction, that means as soon as you ship the product, you are getting the money from your customer, you need to generate a receivable. So when you're creating an invoice, you expect the customer to pay you the money in 10 days, 15 days, or 30 days, depending on what kind of agreement you have, what kind of payment term relationship you have with the customer. You need to create receivables, because as soon as the shipment is completed, you have to generate your revenue. But you are not going to get the money. You are not going to get the money instantly. You might have to wait some time. That's why you need to generate your receivables. So receivables to revenue is created as soon as you generate your invoice. In other words, the invoice is a written verification of the agreement between the buyer and the seller of the goods and services. And in Oracle Cloud Application, we use Manage Transaction Page to view the details or summary informations about invoices, credit memo, debit memo, and chargebacks. And in this page, in the transactions page, we can create invoices, credit memo, debit memo. Chargebacks, there is a different place from where you can create, but you can view the details in the invoice page. And as I have already mentioned, this is an infotile. If you are not aware of what is an infotile, there are two different things we have in cloud application. One is called infolette, another is called infotile. Infolette, where you get some quick information about various APIs for your business organizations. Most of them are available in supply chain area. Infotile is something where you view the informations as well as you can drill down to the details available in that specific graph or in that specific chart. So infotiles allows you to scan information in a greater details from a single page and are designed specially for users who need to orient themselves quickly in intense, repetitive, and focused tasks. Now, as I said, there are two different places from where you can view the details of your transaction. This is the quick place. When you go to the work area, you will view these details. There is also another place that is called manage transactions. Once you click on this star, system will show you manage transactions. And if you go to manage transactions, search with various criteria. You can search with customer name or invoice number or date. There are various criteria on the basis of which you can search. And once you click on the search button after entering the criteria, system will show you all the list of the transactions depending on your search criteria. And from this page itself, you can take various actions, such as you can duplicate an invoice. We had that functionality in 11.12. If you already have an invoice, if you want to copy it to create a new invoice, then you can click on the duplicate button. So over here, if you want to duplicate this invoice, select this and click on duplicate button, and system will create one more invoice and system will take you to that page. Similarly, if you want to edit an invoice, delete an invoice, you can take these actions. You can also credit a transactions, dispute a transactions, manage adjustment. If you have some adjustment against an invoice, you can do it directly from this page. And just quickly go through the actions available over here. We'll also view those actions in the system, and we'll also do those actions, such as we'll duplicate a transaction, we'll credit a transaction, we'll view the installments, we'll also do the adjustment. So the point over here is that you can do all these actions in the summary page, in the manage transactions page, without really opening the transaction. The other option is, of course, you can click on the link over here, the transaction number, and system will take you to the transaction page. And in the transaction page, you can also again do all those activities. You can credit it, you can dispute it, you can review the installment, you can review the distribution. Distributions means all the accounting entries that system is going to generate. Which account will be debited, which account will be credited, what is your receivable account, what is your revenue, what is your tax, what is your freight. All those distributions you can view over here. And finally, when you are ready, you can also create the accounting entries over here by clicking on post to ledger. When you click on the post to ledger, system will create the accounting entry for that specific transaction. But this is not the best way. The best way is to run the program, create accounting program, the same program that we used to have in R12, not in 11i, but in R12 we had the create accounting program. Here in cloud application, you can also run that program to generate accounting entries for several invoices, several debit memo, several credit memo, several transactions together. And once the accounting entries are created, you can click on the link over here, view accounting, to view the details of the accounting, which account is debited and which accounting is credited. And here, if you want to view the balance details, like what is the invoice amount, how much customer has already paid. If you have created credit memo, then the amount might have changed. If you have a debit memo or a chargeback, then the amount might have changed. So you can view the details of the balances by clicking on the link over here. System will show a pop-up where you can view the details. And similarly, transaction activities, whatever activities has happened on that specific transaction, you can view with this view transaction activities. And then this is the transaction. Now we'll compare this transaction form what we have in cloud applications to what we have in 11.12 as well as in the SAP. Most of the informations are same if you are coming from EBS background. There are few changes here and there, but overall the transaction form, all the fields, all the details that we enter in the header level information as well as in the line level informations are quite same. But before going into all the fields, let me go to system and show you how to navigate to this page. First we'll go to home page of cloud applications. Once you log in, the page that will view, then from there how you can navigate to billings, and from billings how can you search various transactions and then can go to a specific transaction. So this is the main springboard. Once you log into Oracle Cloud, system will show you the springboard, and you should have some account receivable roles assigned to your username. Then only you can view all these details over here. So this is main receivables, and as I've already mentioned, here in cloud applications, Oracle has segregated these receivables to two different work areas. One is billing, where you create all the invoices, debit memo, credit memo, all the transactions. And this is the account receivable, where we'll view the details of customer receipts. So once you get a payment from your customer, how you create a receipt and how you apply that receipt to the transactions, that is done over here in the account receivable. To view the details of the billings, click on the billings icon and system will take you to the billings work area. And by default, system will show you this info tile over here. So these are currently all the incomplete invoices that we have for this business unit. At the left top corner, you can see the business units. If you have access to multiple business units, then system will show you all the transactions for all those business units. Right now it is selected as all business units, but if you want to view the details for a specific business unit, then you can click on the icon over here and select that specific business unit. So now if I select US 1 business unit, then system will show me all those transactions only for US 1 business unit. So the number of transactions have been reduced. Initially it was a huge list, now it is only 10-15 invoices are over here. Similarly, if you want to view something which are pending for approval, then you can click on the approval link over here. Right now it is 0, so system won't show me anything. Nothing is in research, so system will not show me anything. Then the import exceptions, right now there are few which are in exceptions, and if you want to view the details, then you can click over here and system will show you the details. Now let me go back to the incomplete transactions over here, and system will show me these are 1 which is incomplete for 0 to 10 days, and there are 19 which are incomplete for more than 10 days. So if you click on this, system will show you the details of the transactions: number, source, class, customer, entered amount, date. And if you want to view any other column, then you can go to view columns and then select that specific columns. If you want to view all the columns, then you can select show all, but that's not user friendly. It will be a lot of columns, and the screen, you need to have a big screen to view all the columns over here. Most of the times you'll be clicking on the transaction number over here to view the details of the transaction. So if you click on the link, the transaction number, system will take you to the transaction page which you have seen in the screenshot. But let me cancel this and go back to the main work area, and from here I'll show you all the tasks. So here if you click on the right corner, the tasks, system will show you whatever task access you have. So in the top we have transactions, then we have customers, then customer account balance, and then accounting. Transaction is the place where you create transactions. This is for crediting transaction. This is for managed transactions. This is the page from where you can search various transactions through certain criteria, such as if you want to view all the transactions for a specific business unit, you can select it. If you want to view transactions for specific source, such as manual transactions, then you can select manual. If you want to view all the intercompany, then you can select the transaction source as intercompany. Select the criterias and then click on search button. You have to select any one of these criteria. So let me select this as transaction source as manual, and then click on the search button. So right now these are all the manual invoices we have over here in this instance for this US1 business unit. From this page itself you can take various actions, such as you can credit it, you can duplicate it, you can view the adjustment, you can review the installment, you can also view the accounting entries. You can do all the things over here, as well as if you click on the transaction number, system will take you to the transaction page. From there also you can do all those actions. So here if you click on the actions, system will again show you all the options. If you want to view the printout of that specific invoice, you can click on the view image and system will show you the printout in the PDF how the invoice will look like, the invoice that you are going to send to your customer. If you are sending a physical copy or if you are sending a PDF to your customer, then this is how the PDF of the transaction will look like. Let me cancel this. Now here are all the fields. That's the most important part, to understand the various fields that we have over here in the transaction. So at the top we have business unit, the business unit in which you are creating the transaction, and when you're creating a new transactions you have to enter it manually. Then the transaction source, it is manual. Then the transaction type. Now instead of doing this, let me cancel this and try to create a new transaction. Then we can go through all the fields. I will enter all the fields, then we'll view all the options available over there. So here you have two options. You can select it and click on the duplicate button and system will duplicate this invoice. The other option is click on done, go back to the main work area, and here click on tasks and create transactions. Okay, so here the transaction class, what kind of transactions you are going to create. Now this is invoice, debit memo, credit memo. Now this is different from 11 and R12. Now let me go back to R12 and show you what I'm saying it is different, because in R12 we used to have invoice, debit memo, credit memo, deposit, guarantee, chargeback. But right now till version 19b cloud applications we don't have those options. Here we have only invoice, debit memo, credit memo. We don't have the option of chargeback, deposit or guarantee. In cloud applications you can create chargeback, and when a chargeback is created you can come to this page and can view the details, but you can manually create a chargeback over here. Now if I compare that to a cloud application, now if I compare that to SAP, now let me go to SAP. Those who haven't worked in SAP, this is the page in which you log into SAP, and once you log into the SAP, system will show you all the menus, same as in R12 what we have responsibility menus, and from that menu you can go to the transaction page or the invoice page to create an invoice. And in SAP world we have something called T codes. That means a short code by which you can directly navigate to a page. So if you know the T code you can enter it over here. If you don't know, then you can use the SAP menu to navigate to the transaction page. The idea is just to let you know how the things are different between Oracle and SAP. And those who have already worked in SAP ECC or HANA S4, then they can easily correlate between how the documents are created in Oracle and how it is created in SAP. Again, FB70 you can use to create the transactions, but most of the times you'll be creating the transactions from the sales order itself when you ship the product. But if you want to manually create an invoice, you have two options. Either you can use FB70 or you can also create F22. Let's say F70, that is more similar to Oracle R12, Oracle Cloud Application. So I'll open this. So now here if you see, we have in the transactions we have various options, invoice and credit memo. It is exactly same in Oracle. In Oracle R12 we used to have invoice, debit memo, credit memo, deposit, guarantee, chargeback, but in cloud applications we have invoice, debit memo and credit memo. These are the three options right now available. Next is the business unit in which you are creating the transaction. In cloud applications it is business unit. In R12 we used to call it as an operating unit, and this is the field that is a bit different, because if I go back to R12, in R12 when you create the transactions you don't have to select the operating unit. I mean you have to select, but it is in the more options. And in cloud applications the legal entity is in the more options, but the operating unit or the business unit is in the header level. So here by default, depending on the legal entity that you have selected, system will show you the operating unit name over here. Of course you can create transactions for multiple legal entities with the same responsibility if you have access to multiple legal entities. So here if I have access to other legal entities, then that I can select over here. Anyway, so that's the main point to understand. The operating unit is over here, and in cloud applications we have it over here before the more tab. And if I go back to SAP, in SAP actually there is no organization structure which you can consider as a operating unit or a business unit. The company code is more similar to a legal entity than an operating unit or business unit, because the way the SAP is designed. But you can think of this as the company code as the legal entity, and we are creating a document in that specific legal entity. Now let me go back to cloud. Then the various other fields that we have over here is the transaction source. So if you are creating manual, if you are importing from order management, then it will be order orchestration. If you are importing it from PA, then it will be project accounting. Then the transaction type, what kind of transactions you are creating. Now for this class invoice, you can create various kind of transactions type. One is our internal transactions, one is for external transactions, one is for intercompany transactions. You can have various transactions. PA invoices can be transaction, PA internal invoice can be another transaction type. So depending on what transaction class you selected, system will show you various transaction type. Again, this is something similar what we used to have in 11 and R12. So now if I change this to credit memo, the transaction type will change. System will show me those transactions types which are of class transaction credit memo. Let me change it back to invoice. And then the transaction number, and let me also select the business unit and the source. US1, then the source as manual. Maybe we'll just go through the invoice and then we'll select and create a new transaction credit memo manually. Next, the transaction number, enter a value over here. Let me give it as MI invoice 1000. And then document number, system will generate when you save the transactions. Then the date on which you are creating the transaction. Next is the accounting date, the date on which the GL transaction will be created. So when the GL journals are created, system will be using this accounting date. The sales person, almost all these fields are same as what we had in R12. Then the invoicing rule, you can create without an invoicing rule. If you want to use over here the revenue scheduling, then you have to select one of the invoicing rule, either in advance or in arrears. So we'll come back to that later, how the invoicing rule impacts your accounting as well as the revenue recognitions. But right now let me select this as blank. Then the currency in which you are creating the invoice, USD, or if you have any other currency, then you can select it over here. And all these fields, the lines, tax, freight, charge, all these amounts will be auto populated once you enter the line level information. So these are all the most important fields that we have in the header level informations. And of course you have to enter the customer before you start creating invoice line level details. If you want to view the other details, then you can click on the show more button over here and system will show you the other details over here. One of the things that you'll realize, the cross reference. So if you are bringing an invoice from order management, from order orchestration, then the cross reference will be your sales order number. But if you are creating manually and if you want to use this field for any other cross reference purpose, then you can also enter the value over here. Next is the customer. So first you need to enter the customer name and the account number. If you know, then you can manually enter it. If you don't know, then you can click on the search button and system will show you this pop-up. Let's say we want to create an invoice for ABC software. So I'll enter the name as ABC. I'll select this ABC application software and I'll click on OK. System will default the customer name, the account number. This is the account number that is created for this US1 business unit. And system will also default the site, the address, the contact. All these things we have already discussed in the customer session. So if you haven't watched the customer video session, please check it out. And while creating an invoice, we have 4 different customers. One is ship to, one is bill to, one is sold to, one another is paying customer. Bill to is the customer to which you are going to send the invoice. Ship to is the customer to which you are sending the product or the service. So when you are creating a sales order, your ship to can be different from your bill to. Ship to is where you are shipping the product and bill to is where you are sending the invoice. Sold to is the customer who is actually buying the product. So normally when you create a sales order, before you create a sales order, you get a purchase order from your customer, and that purchase order is given by one specific customer, and that is your sold to, like to whom you are selling your product, to whom you are having that purchase order sales order relationship. So the sales order will be coming from this the PO, the customer PO will be coming from this organization, and then that organizations might mention you ship the product to this entity and you bill to this entity. It's very much possible. Maybe 90% of the cases you will have the ship to, bill to, sold to same, but it can be different. In that case, you have to select the correct ship to, bill to, sold to. And finally, the paying customer. So the 4th customer can be different. Like someone is placing an order on behalf of somebody else, and you need to ship it to somewhere else, and you need to send the invoice to somewhere else. Nowadays, if you think, most of the companies are using shared service. They will have one customer center, shared service center in, say, India or in Philippines, those countries where labor is not expensive, for all their invoicing purpose. So in that case, the bill to will be always same. It doesn't matter wherever you are going to ship the product. You will be shipping the product globally to all the places, but the bill to will be the same place. Ship to will be various different places around the globe, but the bill to will be, India, or maybe somewhere in Manila in Philippines. But the sold to will be some US corporation in US or in Germany, the main head office where you are having the relationship. And then the paying customer, most of the times the sold to and paying customer can be same, can be different. But if it is a big organization which is buying products on behalf of many other customers and the customers directly pays to you, then the paying customer can be different. And you can also maintain various relationships. It is not necessary that while creating invoice you have to mention all these things. We'll also see the customer relationship, and using the customer relationship, even you can get payment from customer A and apply to a invoice of a customer B. And so these are all the informations, the bill to, ship to, sold to, and paying customers that we have in the header level. Then in the payment tab, we have the payment informations, the payment term, then the due date, and it will be calculated on the basis of payment terms and the date on which you are creating this transaction. So right now it is created on 8th July. That means it will be due on 7th August. Now if I change this to immediate, then system will change this to today's date. So whichever date on which the transaction is created, that would be the payment due date. And if you change it to net 15, then system will add 15 days. So depending on what kind of payment terms you have selected and what is the value in the payment term, system will calculate the due date. Right now you don't see the banking account details. That will be possible only if you click on the save button. I'll come to that. So once you save and complete, you can also select the banking details of the customer. Then the remit to address, to which address you'll be remitting it, and then the miscellaneous. In the miscellaneous, we have the legal entity informations. In R12, we had the legal entity over here and business unit in the more tab, but in cloud, it's a bit different. Then this is the legal entity which is responsible for the P&L and the balance sheet. So when you are creating a document, this legal entity owns that document, and a business unit is just creating a document on behalf of a legal entity. So the same business unit can create documents for multiple legal entity. The concept was added in R12, and we have exactly the same concept in cloud application. So if you have maintain the correct relationship, depending on how the ledgers are created, and in that ledger which legal entities have been assigned, and while creating the business unit which ledger is assigned. These are various other setups. If you are more interested, then please check out the enterprise structure session. But the point is, if you have maintained the correct relationship, here you can select any other legal entity. This is the default legal entity, but you can also select other legal entity if you have done the setups correctly. Then the tax registration number, taxation country, document physical classifications, all these things will default if you have done the setup. Otherwise, if you want, you can also manually enter it. Then generate bill, yes, if you want to generate the bill. If no, then you can select it no, but normally it will be yes. And then we have various other text fields over here, such as special instructions, comment, structured payment, reference. We'll come to this later. This is also one of the important field that you can use for structured payment. Then the PO number, if you are creating a sales order against a customer PO, and against that sales order you are creating an invoice, system will automatically populate this PO number. But if you're manually creating an invoice, you can also enter the customer PO number over here. If it is a service item for which you actually not selling anything and you are directly creating a manual invoice, then you can enter the customer PO. So these are all the header level informations. Now I'll again go back to R12 just to show you that there is hardly any difference between cloud and R12. So here in R12 we have all these information: source, number, invoice. Then in the customer we have ship to, bill to, sold to, paying customers. Then the payment term, invoicing rule, receipt method. Then in the more we have all the various options, whether you want to print it or not, what is the current status, then the tax informations, then the purchase order number, then the notes. So the point is, if you have worked in R12, it won't be that difficult for you to understand and create transactions in cloud applications. Of course, it is very different if you are coming from SAP background. In the header level informations between SAP and Oracle is quite same, but when it comes to line, it is completely different, but we'll come to that later. So here in the header level, we have customer, then the invoice details, then the amounts, tax amounts. Of course, you don't need to enter, system will calculate it for you. Let me select one customer. Then the invoice date, it's kind of same. We also have the invoice date, but the way accounting entries are created in Oracle and SAP are different. So, but here you have both the invoice date as well as the posting date is kind of the GL date on which the accounting entry will be created. Then the amount, the header level amount that you need to enter over here. Then we also have, this is the basic informations. Then in the payments, you have the payments informations, payment term, then billing date. Of course, the way Oracle and SAP works, the payment terms are different, but you have kind of similar kind of informations as well as the payment method, payment currency, and the banking informations. Then in the details, you have the details stuffs, as well as in the notes you can put some notes. The main difference over here is that in SAP the chart of account structure is completely different. So we have to manually enter the accounting entries, or at least the GL account if I compare to Oracle applications, the natural account number while creating a document. So here, depending on the customer, as soon as you select the customer, system will pick the receivable account. In Oracle, you don't have to worry about it. In Oracle, the cloud as well as in R12, the accounting structure is so complicated, so you really don't need to bother about the receivables or revenue account. But in SAP, we have this concept. So when you select the customer, system will default the receivables account from the customer. And here, if you want to put some header text or any informations, then you can put it over here. That's the main thing that I wanted to show you, how the documents are compared between Oracle and SAP. The main difference in the line label. Now if I go to the line in the cloud application, so here in the line label, if you are creating an invoice from a sales order, then system will default all the line details. But if you are manually creating, then you have to manually enter the item number. Now it is not necessary that you will be creating an invoice for a real physical inventory item. You might be creating an invoice for something which is not defined as an inventory item. In that case, you can just put the description. But if it is an inventory item, you can enter the item number over here, and system will default the details such as the descriptions, the unit of measure, all these informations will default, as well as the unit price. But as I said, if it is not an inventory item, suppose I want to write something, test line, then I can also put the descriptions. Then you have to select the memo line, because system needs to find out accounting entries. So unless you enter the memo line, system will not find out what is the accounts that needs to be used for that specific line. Then the unit of measure, quantity, how many quantities you are going to invoice. Let's say we are going to use 10 over here and 100 over here. Now as soon as you enter the quantity and the unit price, you can manually change the unit price. The amounts over here will change. So right now the transaction line details is this much and the transaction total is this much, because you haven't entered any tax, freight or charges. Here we'll just quickly go through the invoice. Later on we'll come back to this form and we'll go through other options such as revenue scheduling, tax determination, editing freights. We'll come to that later, but right now I just quickly want to show you how to create an invoice, a simple invoice, without going through the details. But we'll again come back to this and we'll go to the revenue scheduling, which is pretty important if you're using revenue scheduling. The concept is same as R12, but if you are coming from a different ERP system, then you need to understand how the revenue scheduling works. Now after entering all these informations, you can click on the save button. System will try to check if all the entries, all the data that you have entered are valid or not, and system, once does the validation, system will save it and system will generate a transaction number. So here you will see the transaction number once it is saved. If something is wrong, if your document setups are not correct, then system might throw you an error. And the status is incomplete, as you used to have in R12. When you create an invoice, initially it will be incomplete and then you need to complete it. Unless you complete it, you can't take any actions. If I go to actions, I can't, I won't see anything over here. The only thing I can see is the distribution. So if I click on the distribution, edit distribution, system will show me the distribution details. Right now I don't want to do that. What I will do, I'll click on the complete button, and here also you have various options. You can click on complete and review, complete and close, or you can also do complete and create another. We want to view the details, so I'll click on complete and review. That means system will complete this transaction and system will keep me in this page where I can view the details, the distribution details, as well as I can view the other actions that I can do over here. So what are the things the system has done? System has calculated the tax amount. If you want to view the details, you can click on the tax amount over here and system will show you how system has calculated that amount. So these are all the various tax rates that system has used to calculate this amount. and it will depend. The setups for e-tax in cloud application is exactly same as what we used to have in 11 or 12, depending on various attributes, receipt location, bill to location, kind of product that you are selling. You can put various tax rates, you can default the tax rates, and system will use those tax rates to calculate the tax amount. So this is the total amount, this is the line amount, this is the tax amount. What we want to see now is the distribution. So I'll click on actions and then go to review distributions, and system will show you all the receivables account, revenue account, tax account, freight account. So this is the receivable account, this is the rounding. If there is some rounding discrepancy, system will use it. Right now it is 0. Then the revenue, then tax, the two liability accounts, and here we have the receivables, the asset account, and revenue is the our P&L account over here. Now let me cancel this, and if you want to generate the accounting entries, then you can click on actions, then click on account in draft. That means system will generate the accounting entry for that invoice, but system will show you only in draft status. System will not create any journals over here, neither system will create anything in GL. So now this is the final accounting entries. Receivable will be debited by this amount, revenue and tax will be credited by these two amounts. If you're satisfied, you think the accounting entries are correct and you are ready to create the final accounting entries, then you can click on actions and post to ledger. Then system will create the accounting entries. The process, as I said, it's exactly same as what it is in 11 and R12. Now, those who are coming from SAP background, I'll just go back to SAP. So the main difference over here is that when in SAP you are creating a revenue, when you are creating an invoice, then you have to manually enter the account that will be credited. But in cloud, in 11i or R12, we don't do that. System decides the account that's going to be credited depending on various attributes, such as what kind of items you are using. There are many places from where system will default, and we'll also go through the auto accounting rule. If you are coming from R12, you might already know. Auto accounting rule is a rule that we can use to find out various places from where system will default the accounting rule. And those who are in SAP, it is kind of same as accounting determination rule, but in a very high level, but it's completely different concept. And in cloud applications, as it was in the R12, we can use auto accounting rule to derive the distributions account, revenue account. But on top of that, if you want to make some modifications in subledger accounting, you can do that. But as I said earlier in one of the sessions, subledger accounting is mostly used for inventory costing and manufacturing, all the supply chain areas. For project accounting, for AP and for AR, most of the times you should be able to fulfill all your business requirements without using subledger accounting. If there is a specific requirement, you can of course use it, but most of the times it is not required. The auto accounting rule that we have in AR, the auto accounting rule we have in project accounting are quite flexible to satisfy almost all the business requirements. So this is the main difference. Those who are coming from SAP, here in cloud applications, we don't enter any account, the account that will be credited. System finds it out. Similarly, we don't enter any receivable account. Now let me go back to system. And finally, once you are complete everything, then you can click on save and close. System will complete this and will take you back to the main work area. Okay, the transaction has been saved. Now let me go back to the presentation. So we have already reviewed this, and this is also you have seen how the 11 and R12 forms compare with cloud applications. Of course, I haven't gone to 11i, but there is hardly any difference between 11 and R12. The main difference is in 11i, we could create transactions in only one operating unit, and in Oracle cloud application, in Oracle R12 as in cloud application, we can create transaction for multiple business units or for multiple operating units with the same form, with the same menu. Otherwise, most of the things are quite same. And this is SAP. You have already seen this is the place where you create transactions and you have to manually enter the GL account. And again, if you are coming from SAP background, then I'll suggest you to check out the organization structure, enterprise structure, and the subledger accounting method session, because the accounting structure, the organization structure, the enterprise structure, the accounting method, the chart of account are so different and so complicated in Oracle R12 and Oracle Cloud applications. It will be very difficult for you to understand all the processes, all the accounting entries, unless you understand the enterprise structure and the financial structures. If you are using SAP F22, then this is the way in which you create accounting entries. In that case, you have to manually enter both the receivable account and the revenue account as line 1 and line 2, and then finally system will generate the document. And of course you have the option of post. I haven't gone to that, but it is exactly same as in Oracle 11 or 12 as well as in cloud. After all the documents have been created, you have to click on the post. In cloud applications you also have the same thing. Once you have created a document, if everything is fine, once you want to generate the accounting entries, then you need to click on the post button. Or create the journal entries, and system will create the journal entries, and the accounting entries will be created in the GL. All your receivable and revenue accounting entries will be created. Next is reviewing installment. So what we did till now is a single invoice with a single line. That means customer is going to pay on a single date, but it is very much possible that you have a long-term contract with the customer and the customer is not going to pay you all the amount at a given date. They might be paying you in 2 or 3 different installments. That's you can do in Oracle Cloud application. So this is the page where you can view the installments, and if required you can make some adjustments, such as you can change the due date, you can add a new line, you can delete one of the existing lines. This is the key point. Use the review installment window to review the installments and transactions that have split payment terms. Each row display the due date, installment amount, and balance due. So here are the 3 important information. So you have the due date, then the installment amount, how much amount they're going to pay against that specific due date, and the balance due, how much amount is still pending with the customer that they need to pay. If the AR, this is a profile option, if the AR update due date profile option is set to yes, you can perform the following 3 options. You can update the due date on an installment. If you update a due date, this recalculates the days late and due days for installments based on the new due date. Update the unpaid portion of an installment, add or delete installment. So if you have a business requirement where you need to make modifications to the installment, system suggested installment, then you need to enable this profile option. Unless you set this profile option to yes, you can do all these activities. Next is customer details on invoice, but before that let me go back to system and show you the how to view and review installments and how you can make some changes to an installment. Let me go back and search the new transaction that we just created. So I'll go back to manage transactions and I'll search with today's date, enter the transaction date, and then click on the search button, and system will show me the 2 transactions. This is the transaction that we just created, so I'll click on this transaction. From that page also I can view the installments, but here also I can view. So click on actions and then review installments. System will open a new pop-up. Right now there is only a single installment, but if suppose I want to manually make changes without making any other changes directly in the installment, I can click on the plus sign and add a new line over here, and I'll change this amount to, let's say not point but say 1000, and change this due date. Says customer says they can't pay on this date but they want a different date in August or September, then I'll select that date. Okay, now the total amount over here is different from the invoice amount. Okay, so now if I click on save and close, so here if you see the total of the installment amount doesn't equal to the transaction total amount, because I added a new line with 1000 but I didn't remove the amount from over here. So this is something I think Oracle should be smart enough, but there are also various other issues if Oracle automatically calculates the amount. Anyway, right now it is not available, so if you are adding some amount over here, then you have to manually change it. So I have to change it to 2969, then I can click on save and close, then system will save this. Now we have 2 different installments and I can click on save and close, or rather save. Now when you are making an installment, you are not making any changes to your accounting entries, because customer is going to pay in a different date, but your revenue is still calculated on the date on which you are creating this transaction. Your receivable still remains same. Only when you get the payment on different dates, your receivable amount will move from your receivable to cash. So let me show you that. So if I go back to view accounting entries, the accounting entries is still same. On this specific date, on this date 7th 8th 19, the receivables to revenue is same. Now the receivable will remain over here till we get the first installment, the 2000 something. Then some amount will move from receivable to cash, and finally when you get the another 1000, that amount will be moved from receivable to cash. So whenever you get the actual amount, it will be moved from one balance sheet account to another balance sheet account. Let me go back to the presentation.